おい。
I don't remember this episode looking like that. He's affecting the timeline. We are hitting the plot at breakneck speed, and there's no stopping this train. Revice's turning point has been quickly approaching, and I have no idea what to expect in the coming weeks. So we're just going to go ahead and get right into it because we have multiple branching plot points in this episode that wind up meeting at the end. First up, the sacrifices needed for Gifu's return has reached its endpoint, and our inductees from the previous episodes have to be filtered by Gifu in order to transcend their Phase 2 forms into their Gift X forms. However, not before these two enact their brand of street justice. It's time for some face-offs. Lawyer Guy wants his revenge on Ikki, and multi-contract man who doesn't want to get his hands dirty goes after Sakura. Meanwhile, Aguilera's getting yassified for later. So it is now that we essentially have 3 branches to our storyline, so I'm going to cover each individually. We'll start off with Sakura's side of the story. It revolves around her school life, as everyone has a pretty good production photo of Genu and are just sharing them around. Sakura, when did you have time to take photos? Or rather, when did you have people actually come around with cameras while you were fighting Deadman? Okay. Anyway, we meet her friends, but especially this one white girl that we see too often. And her terrible acting throughout all of her scenes was just glaringly obvious. I don't know if she's supposed to be scared or laughing the entire time. It's bad. The Planaria Vice Stamp owner shows up and yells out for Sakura in front of all her schoolmates to see. And they're pretty excited, thinking that it might be her sugar dad. I'm not gonna finish that sentence. Anyway, he sends out his terribly designed monster to go after Sakura, leaving her with a gag of trying to keep her identity a secret, but fuck it, transforms anyway. Julio shows up, forcing him to finally make his contract with his Deadman. Exactly what he was trying to avoid. However, after some more fighting with Sakura, leads her to rider kicking the Deadman right out of him, but not before he gets taken back to base. Ikki's side of the story involves the recently freed Fenix prisoner, Lawyer Guy. He makes his way to the bathhouse and Ikki loses his shit, because he's got to take off his shoes. The fight goes pretty much as you would expect, especially since he just got his power up last episode, so he just goes right into it. However, there is one line that doesn't sit well with Ikki. As he's told that he has 0 empathy and is an egoist. But Vice out here, being the guidance counselor that he is, snaps Ikki right out of it, pretty much telling him that Ikki has the right to be what he is. So let's go ahead and just rider kick this guy. And man, the ice effects from last episode seem to be virtually gone. Oh well, let's forget that was a thing, right? Also, remixes. Fusing. What the fuck is this shit? Needless to say, he's also taken back to base after he gets rider kicked out of his Deadman. Meanwhile, at Fenix, we have George letting in Hiromi and Daiji in on the scoop that the commander is likely the chameleon Deadman. Hiromi has his usual characteristic outburst, which is what you'd expect from a soldier in a multi-billion-dollar military institution. However, the proof is undeniable. The commander, being the villain that he has been called out to be, is all of a sudden hearing all of this. But of course, George saw all of this coming and leads him into a trap when he attempts to steal the Gifu stamp. This leads to a confrontation between him, Hiromi, and everyone else. And Hiromi, being the little bitch that he is in this episode, proves that he was written to be useless. This scene almost led me to think that Hiromi was going to end up being that final sacrifice, because then, he would have had purpose. However, this gets completely disproven later, and I'll get into that. But it's here that we probably get the best scene out of this episode. Hell, maybe even the whole series up until this point. As the commander hits not just one memeable emote, but two. I never expected to see both PogChamp and Trollface within 30 seconds of each other. It's free real estate. The chameleon Deadman reveals that he killed the commander back in episode 1 and has been waiting for this moment. And George just gives him the Gifu Vice stamp. What? Now we get the convergence of all three of these plot points. Aguilera looking like Aerith, if you pick the best dress option in Final Fantasy VII Remake, makes her grand entrance, as she's been groomed for this moment her whole life. Wow. Literally. And I guess there's been a Gifu cult this whole time for like a while? Maybe since 71? Okay. Sure. The three villains from this episode are presented right in front of Gifu. It is here that for a brief second we see that the chameleon's true self is... I don't know. See, for a brief second, I thought that this might have been Busan, but looking at the build and the hair, it just doesn't match up. And then I thought maybe it was the Ushijima dad. But once again, it's the hair. So who is this guy? Could he be a character that we've seen before, or a completely new person that we'll see later on? Questions. These three are indeed accepted as gift X, and blessed upon them the knowledge needed to finish the task. Yes, only one sacrifice is remaining. Oh fuck, Aguilera. It's Aguilera. The fuck? And we are left with our ultimate plot twist. There aren't really any forms to break down for this episode, as it was a reuse of what we've had before, minus that remix debacle that we had. My god. However, it appears that we are reaching the climax of this arc, with the episode probably after Christmas being crazy. These writers are just crazy and are pulling out all the stops. This episode is getting another A, I guess. I couldn't really think of a lower ranking for this one. Our villains for this episode are showing why their attacks have been so coordinated. It's always been less about causing havoc and more about getting what they need to level up to the point of just being nutritional food for Gifu. Their plan has finally paid off and they've gotten everything they needed. And it kind of seems like Ortega was way more aware of the plan than Julio was. Or Julio was aware but didn't want to acknowledge it. Ikki gets minor development, Sakura continues to be the best main character in this show, Daiji was a background character, and Hiromi was a line that was edited in by the editor after the script was already made. We had a big meaty plot that was focused heavily on the villains. And that's not a bad thing, because for a while now I've seen that the biggest complaint online has been the Deadmans are doing nothing. See, it's typically around this period, episode 14 in other writer shows, that we get their second writer, or we get the revelation of who the second writer is. Yet in Revice, in the span of 14 episodes, we've gotten about 5 writers, I think 13 form changes, and a whole lot of character development, and still unsolved mysteries. Revice is just hitting differently, and I am loving it. It's a lot to take in since, obviously, because I'm doing these reviews, I'm watching these episodes a few more times before I'm filming this segment, and collecting my thoughts. I think Build was the last time I had such a ride watching a Kamen Rider show. So let's just see how it goes from here, and hopefully their fuse doesn't come short before the end. So what did you think about the episodes? What are your thoughts? Do you think the commander is really dead or just faded somewhere else? Because of course, this is fiction and no one is really dead. Also, who is the chameleon Deadman? Are they someone we already know, or are they someone yet to be introduced into the storyline? Also, how hyped do you think this next episode is gonna end up being? Anyway, that was a lot to take in for this episode, having pretty much 3 separate plot lines going on concurrently, so I hope breaking them down in the way that I did helps some of y'all in terms of comprehending this review. But otherwise, that's it for me. So while there may be a lack of empathy and full-on ego, sometimes that's Kamen Rider. Bye.